Justin with Braveheart Training Academy, and we are just going to go over the 4 universal safety rules, okay? So these rules are super important for keeping you safe when you're around firearms or while you are handling firearms, okay? So number 1, always treat your firearm as if it were loaded, and that means that if you have a firearm in a safe, if you have a firearm on you, if you have a firearm that you just purchased, whatever it is, you're going to treat it as such that you would treat it when it was loaded, if you knew it were loaded. And so that also speaks to, you should know its condition. So right now, I have a firearm in a holster right here. Now, I know its condition, but what am I going to do? I'm going to treat it as if it were loaded. So that means that when I pull it out of the holster, I'm going to keep the muzzle pointed in a direction that is safe for the environment. Right now, I'm alone in this room. There's no one else here. I have some training ammunition in the firearm, so I can show you right here in the magazine as well as in the chamber here. You can see that there is the same ammunition. Just in case, if you didn't believe me, I'll go ahead and rack it for you. So know your condition. So if your holster or if your firearm is going to be around you at any time, you want to make sure that you know the condition and that you treat it as if it were loaded. Now, number 2, you are never going to point your firearm at anything you do not wish to shoot. So that means if I pull this firearm out right now, I'm not going to point it in a direction where I think it could harm someone, especially, or shoot something that I don't want to shoot, okay? And so pointing your firearm ultimately shows your intention, and so when you're being safe with your firearm, you want to point it in safe directions. I often share with others that when you're manipulating your firearm in your home, let's say, you want to have your firearm safe, set up in a place where you can point your firearm in that direction and feel safe doing so. And so mine is in my basement, away from everything. If you can't have it in a basement, you want to try to put it on a wall where you're not going to be aiming a firearm at your family somewhere around and pointing it into that safe, so that you're going to be able to make sure that you're not pointing it at people or anything else you don't want to shoot. And now, number 3, you're going to keep your finger straight off the trigger until you intend to fire. So again, let me go ahead and pull this out here. So right now, I'm not intending to fire, so I'm keeping my finger straight. For the demonstration here, I'm just going to show you. If I were to be carrying this firearm in any capacity or picking this firearm up off a table, etc., like if I'm at the range, I want to keep this finger straight. I like to teach my students to do exactly what I'm doing here, keeping it nice and high so that you can see very clearly that nothing is going into the trigger well here. And keeping your finger nice and high and straight means I can apply force onto the frame and onto the slide of this semi-automatic block here and not risk that finger sliding into the trigger well. And so in doing so, I'm not going to be shooting or depressing the trigger to make a round exit the muzzle of this firearm, and that's going to make me more safe. So not only is this about the way you handle a firearm, but this plays heavily into when you're using a firearm. So if I'm having to actually draw a firearm and use it for self-defense, I'm going to make sure that I'm not putting my finger on the trigger until I'm ready to actually fire. And there's a lot of different skill sets that depend on how I'm drawing and why I'm drawing, but usually for most civilians, you're not going to be drawing this firearm unless you are in imminent danger and someone is trying to kill you. All right, and the last safety rule: know your target and know what's in line with your target. So that means that if you're at the range, let's say, you want to understand that when you look at your target, before you even point a weapon toward that target, what is in line with that target? What's behind that target? What might come in front of that target? And so when there's things happening at the range, sometimes weird stuff happens, let's say in an outdoor range, and an animal, a bird flies by. Not likely, but it could happen. You don't want to be shooting wildlife. You don't want to be shooting it while the conditions are not safe. And ultimately, it's up to you to make sure that you're paying attention to that target area and that you're in control, in that you know and understand the relationship between you, your firearm, and that target. And so if it's in a real world scenario where you're using your firearm for self-defense, you want to make sure that you know your target. And so this is especially important if you're in a self-defense situation in darkness at night in your home. You must understand the relationship between you, your firearm, and that target, and what could be coming in line with it to ultimately be safe and have best outcomes. All right, so that was the 4 universal safety rules. Please reach out for any questions you might have, and be safe out there.